Today we're going to talk about variables in an experiment. A variable is something that is changed or can be changed. A constant is something that does not change. A lot of times your control needs to be something that is constant. Science experiments use an independent variable. That is the factor that is changed by the person doing the experiment. Sometimes you'll see that worded as the manipulated variable. Okay, the independent variable is something that the experimenter changes. Okay, the dependent variable is the factor which is measured in the experiment. It's what changes in response to the dependent variable, or into the independent variable, sometimes called the responding variable. A constant is the factors that stay the same in the experiment, okay? And then a control is a standard to which comparisons are made in an experiment. So the four parts we talked about of variables are independent, dependent, constant, and controls. An example, imagine you want to see what color of bird feeders your local birds prefer. The independent variable there would be the color of the feeder. The dependent variable would be what you would measure, and that would be the amount of bird food that was eaten. Constants would need to be the locations of the bird feeder, and then the same type of bird food, feed them the same type of day. You can a lot of constants, and then the control in this would be a little bit harder to pick out, but what would be the normal color bird feeder? Okay, so whatever colors just your normal bird feeder. When this one just went over, the independent variable being the color of the feeders, the dependent variable being the amount of seed eaten. Once again, the dependent variable is what you are measuring, okay? You're measuring the amount of seed eaten. You couldn't just say seed, you'd have to say the amount of seed that is eaten. The control is the standard to which the comparisons are made in the experiment. And here again, we're going to talk about this being the thing that is the normal thing, okay? So in this case, you probably say the control is what you compare them to all of them. And the constants, everything has to be kept the same. Location of the feeders, the kind of feeder used, putting the feeders out at the same time. Same season, okay, same number of birds, trying to eat them. Might be something you need to measure the same number of birds and compare. Well, the same size of birds, I'm sorry, the same size of birds, not number of birds, okay? Same size of birds are eating them. Our experimental design here, like I said, we had 3 colors. We have measured the same dependent variable in there. And now notice, we only have 1 independent variable and 1 dependent variable, okay? The color that is the only thing that you're changing. You're not changing the location of feeders, the kind of seeds, or the type of feeders. Now, the key thing in here is that you need to hold everything constant except the independent variable, okay? Only the independent variable can change. Because if you're using different types of feed, in this example, then you could be talking about, is it the feed that they're preferring or is it the color that they're preferring? Same thing with location, is one thing going to be closer to water, closer to the bird. So you want to keep everything other than the independent variable the same. So like I said, it's important to change only the independent variable so then you can have a fair experiment. You're not seeing how multiple things are affecting things. That's how you can have bias in there. We have a lot of different variables that we're not holding constant. You can say bias. You can say, well, I want it to be the color that's making the most effect, but I'm going to put the best bird food in the color I want in the green feeder because I like green better. So I'm going to put the best bird food in there. Well, we all know we're going to go, birds are just like us. They're going to eat the best things. Okay. So when we reduce bias and make sure that our result is our results are very verifiable and are not showing bias. Like I said, you won't know whether the independent variable is what's causing the change. Okay, an example here. Sam wants to know if birds prefer one color of feeder to another. He makes 3 feeders out of 2-liter bottles and paints 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 green. He fills the feeder with the same amount of sunflower seed and plans to keep the feeders out for 1 week before measuring how much seed is eaten out of each. On Tuesday, he puts each of the feeders in his backyard, the red feeder in a large dead tree, the blue feeder sits in the doghouse, and the green one sits in a small bushy tree. Is his experiment fair? Well, the first thing we need to determine the independent variable. Okay. In this example, we have 2 independent variables. Okay. The 2 things we're changing is the color. Okay. we're changing the color. We have a red one, a blue one, and a green one. The other independent variable here is we have the location. One's in a tree, one's on a doghouse, and one's in a dead tree. So we have two independent variables. The dependent variable would be the amount of seed eaten. Constants, in constants, we don't have as many constants here, okay? Maybe the same time of day we're putting, the same time frame we're putting them out, and the type of seed used. But is this experiment fair? No, it is not, because we have two independent variables, okay? He's testing two things here. He's testing the color and the location. So this is not a fair experiment. Okay, another example. Maria wants to know if they prefer one color feeder to another. She makes 3 feeders out of 2-liter bottles, paints one red, one blue, and one green. She fills the feeders with the same amount of mixed bird seed and plans to keep the feeders out for 10 days before measuring how much seed is eaten from the feeder. She puts each of the feeders in the school courtyard in a small tree hanging at the same height. So does this experiment seem fair? So we need to start talking about our independent, dependent, constants, and controls, okay? So our independent variable here would be the color of the bird feeder. The dependent variable would be the amount of seed eaten. And then finally, the constants here are the location and the length of time they're out. They're all being out for 10 days. And also the same amount, the same bird seed here. So is this experiment fair? Yes, we only have one independent variable because she only changed the color of the feeder. So this is one independent variable, means that we have a fair experiment. Okay, so here's another example here. Still talking about birds and bird seed. Terry wants to see, loves birds and wants to see how many she can have in her yard. She wants to know whether she's wasting money buying expensive mixed seed when a cheaper brand just arrived at her local store. She wonders, will the expensive seed attract more birds to her backyards? So we need to devise an experiment. First thing we need to do before we devise this experiment is to figure out the independent variable, dependent variable, constant, and controls. Okay, so the independent variable would be the kind of seed. Are we talking about regular or cheap or expensive? Okay, I know we didn't explicitly mention regular feed in there, but that's the normal thing. Okay, that's the normal thing, and that normal thing is going to be the control. That's what you're comparing it to. That's normally what we would use. The dependent variable could be the number of the birds visits. Okay, the number of the birds visit. Things you need to held constant would be the location of the feeders, the type of feeders, and then the way she measures the amount of seed eaten and the way she counts the birds. Okay, is she measuring how much is left each day in the feeder, or is she factoring in stuff being dropped on the ground, picking stuff off the ground, and things like that? And that's all I have for you today. You have a homework over variables. Remember, your independent variable being the thing that the tester changes. Time is the most common independent variable. The dependent variable is the thing that responds to the independent variable. Your constants are something that you need to hold the same so that you only have one independent variable. And then your control is the normal thing that you're comparing it to.